Okay. This week's a very special pressure ranking zone because it's all about Gaelic football. Where do we start?
We haven't spoken about Gaelic football yet this morning, so the 5 most pressurised situations in Gaelic football right now, starting at number 5, are all of Kerry's forwards not called David Clifford. So if you picked up a copy of the Irish Independent on Saturday, you would have seen Tomás O'Shea writing that Kerry are leaning on David Clifford too much. The fact that they lean on them, obviously, on him is nothing new, but the idea that they lean on him too much is something that I guess hasn't been spoken about too much in recent years, given, as we heard in Scoreboard Jungle a while ago, that Sean O'Shea is the Young Footballer of the Year, that there are a number of other players like Stephen O'Brien, when he comes back into the team, that have been able to alleviate the scoring threat. And as we've seen in recent weeks, the likes of Tony Brosnan too. But is there going to be too much of a reliance on Clifford once they actually come up against a team who really, really want to win a game and when the stakes are much higher than they have been over the last couple of years? Maybe Tomás O'Shea is onto something. So they're not up to the top of these pressure rankings, not anywhere near it. But I said I just include them for that reason.
Yeah, they've got a brilliant array of attacking. They have an unbelievable array of attacking talent now after the last couple of league games. When you consider who wasn't playing in those last few league matches and who has still to come in to join that team. So what's the story of Brosnan? How good is he?
Exceptional. He's a really, really good footballer. The thing that we spoke to Kieran Donaghy about last Monday was, how does Tony Brosnan start scoring goals? And Donaghy was saying that it's only a matter of time. He will start banging into goals eventually, and he kicked 6 points on Saturday. Again, one of those opportunities, you potentially see a Dublin forward going for goal in those situations. And I just did a quick look back through some statistics over the course of the weekend. I might put together a more wider set of these before the week is out. But just a quick glance at Kerry's goal-scoring record since Peter Keane has taken over. They haven't scored over 2 goals in any game. Now, I'm not saying that you need to score more than 2 goals in any game when you're kicking 21, 22 points. But Dublin have had a habit of racking up 4 or even 5 goals whenever things have been going their way. Whenever Kerry get a bit of a gap between them and the opposition like they did on Saturday, they win the game by 10 points as a result of kicking a lot of points. I just wonder if there's going to be an extra element that they need to find where they can find the back of the net a little bit more. Might do something on that a little bit as the week wages on. But one of the other things here on Clifford is that he definitely looks like he's more capable of creating scores this year. And I wonder if that feeds into the idea of the reliance on him as well, that to actually get the best out of your forward line, even if he's not kicking your scores, you need him to be on the ball in some capacity, because he is like a magnet. He draws 2 or 3 men away from the rest of the forwards, and somebody like Tony Brosnan can garner a lot of space. So I think Tomás is onto something, definitely. But I do think that the other forwards are coming nicely to the boil as well, such as Brosnan.
What was it, 2-10 in the first half against Donegal at the weekend, and he'd scored 1 or 2 of those points, but had actually been, very creative in helping the others to reach those scores. Kerry's performance very good at the weekend.
Very good, but I will come back to this. You're up against Donegal without Michael Murphy. Donegal without Michael Murphy is like a Carberry without Spuds. There is no point in judging anything against Donegal if Mike Murphy's on the pitch. Ryan McHugh wasn't on the pitch. In fairness, there was a couple of really good performers that might, I guess, concern Tyrone ahead of next weekend, but I think more importantly concern Kerry. Kieran Thompson was excellent on Saturday, and it seemed like Peter Crowley was picking him up for the majority of the game, and you'd wonder how do they stop that happening next time. How do they stop a man having such joy of him? But they'll have so much more of their players available for Tyrone this weekend. As good as Tyrone looked the weekend, and we'll get to them in a moment, you still make Donegal slight favourites, I suspect, just by dint of the fact that they looked so impressive against Tyrone, 10 days ago at this point?
Yeah, I mean, what was that? Was that all shadow boxing? Was everything shadow boxing? Let's get into that. Donegal are favourites. Donegal are 13-8 on, Tyrone are 7-4, which is big enough difference in the prices, but it's 2 point spread on that. So what's next? Who's number 4?
Number 4 is Galway. So pressure on Galway without Damien Comer, basically. We've seen there that he's going to be out for the vast majority of the championship. If we're going to see Damien Comer play championship football for Galway this year, they probably need to win the Connacht Championship. Who knows? He's a young man. He could recover quicker, but that's what we would expect. We also had a situation after the game where Ian Burke was on crutches. Pádraig Joyce wasn't happy with this at all. It came as a result of a James McCarthy slide tackle, and all of a sudden you're looking at a shoestring attack for Galway. Not sure what the Burke situation is going to be, but if they miss those 2 players, they're right up against it when it comes to Connacht. After the league that they had, their ambition would have been to contend for an All-Ireland title. Now, I guess there's a number of free passes you can give to every team in the year that is 2020, and Galway will be more than entitled to that. At the same time, Pádraic Joyce is a winner. This Galway team is almost like a team in American sports that have been tanking for quite some time and are now ready to win. They've been ready to win for quite some time now. There isn't any joy in, coming close to Mayo or winning Connacht and then going out with a valiant effort in an All-Ireland quarter-final or semi-final. They're going for Sam Maguire at this point, and the pressure is most definitely on them with the Comer news and with the potential Ian Burke news too.
Yeah, look, it's not great. You would say that of all the teams that improved from the first league game to the second league game, Galway's improvement was one of the most marked, not getting hockeyed by 20-odd points the second weekend and looking like you were going to win the game against Dublin. I thought that was pretty interesting. We'll get to Dublin in a second. That was okay, so I think we can draw a bit of a scratch through their performance, large parts of their performance in the Mayo game.
I actually would agree with that. About 80% of that point. I think that defensively, what they needed to show was something at the weekend against Dublin, because as we pointed out last week, all of Mayo's scores not only came frequently, they came in a very easy manner, and they were scoring right through the heart of that Galway defence, where they have looked really strong over the last few years. Addressing that should have been an easy thing for Pádraic Joyce. Sometimes making up if you lose by 24 points, sometimes the 20 points is easier to make up than the remaining 4 points. And I think that those strides will be made by Galway over the next few weeks. But the Connacht Championship is going to be possibly the most intriguing provincial championship we have. Granted, Donegal Tyrone this weekend is going to be brilliant. But that little triumvirate of Roscommon, Mayo, Galway, you can kind of make a case for any one of the three of them at this point. Roscommon have been unbelievably impressive as well. And we know what Mayo did to Galway 2 weeks ago. You asked that question and you're like, it's got to be Galway. Things have changed a little bit, and it's going to be one hell of a championship to see who comes out on top over there.
Yeah, so just for anybody, Monaghan Cavan is Saturday afternoon at 1:15. Sunday it's Donegal against Tyrone and Derry against Armagh, and that's just the Ulster Football Championship this weekend. So not a bad weekend of Gaelic games coming our way.
No, and in fairness, I think I wrote off the Ulster Championship a little bit too soon there, because you have the likes of Down and Derry who might make a step forward over the next couple of years. But you have Armagh, who are coming up to Division 1. I know Cavan have gone the opposite way, and then you throw them in with your three regulars in Division 1 already, with Donegal, Tyrone, and with Monaghan. And it's just, it is going to be good. I think I probably got ahead of myself there. The Ulster Championship is still the one to watch. It will always be the one to watch. I just think that there's a nice little bit of renewed intrigue in the West.
Yeah. Leitrim Mayo is Sunday at 1:15. Is that right? Am I reading that
correct? Live on RTE News now. This is the level that the cramming together of GAA has gone to. It'll be available on your news channel. It doesn't happen too often.
What's next? Who's 3?
At number 3 is the AFL. And there is a massive amount of pressure on AFL and Australia in general to keep producing talents for us in Ireland. Talents like Conor McKenna, and thank you to everybody in Australia from a Gaelic Games point of view for helping produce this incredible talent, for the big transfer fee that Tyrone paid to acquire his services. He has been Tyrone's best player over the last little while. He has slotted back into the GAA life so seamlessly. And I've put the pressure on the AFL this week because the pressure will be on Tyrone next year, I think. I think you, again, if we're talking about free passes, I think you accept that Tyrone without Colin McShane are going to struggle to win the All-Ireland. They will come close, and they will, they could lose this weekend, but if they win this weekend, then you'd imagine they're going to be in a great position to come through the front door and potentially make it to an All-Ireland final. But if they don't, you look at them next year, and you look at Canavan's performance at the weekend and how himself and McKenna linked up. It is something that you can't not be excited for as a neutral. I can only imagine how Tyrone fans feel about that. You throw Colin McShane into that forward line, and I think it is an unbelievably attractive proposition. Maybe Tyrone are missing one midfielder. If Colin Kavanagh was only 2 years younger, I would give them a real shot of winning the All-Ireland next year, because what you would have then is the ability to free Matty Donnelly up a little bit more. And I know Matty Donnelly's not getting any younger himself, but I just wonder if there is too much of a gap between a good generation and what looks like a really good generation coming next for Tyrone. That if all this bunch of players came together a little bit sooner, if McKenna hadn't gone to Australia, you might have had something more tangible in terms of an All-Ireland tilt a little bit sooner. But still, you cannot but be excited for what their prospects are next year, that's for sure.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2 is Mayo. Mayo are under pressure because of you. You put them in, basically, you made a case that they should have been number one in the power rankings last week.
I stand by that.
Tomorrow, by the way.
I got slaughtered. I got slaughtered. The whole point of the pressure of the power rankings is like today, who has done the most to give you some comfort that they're the best team at the moment. And last week, that was the evidence. They had the best performance. This week, they have not had the best performance. So you change, new evidence comes to light, you change your minds. The power rankings shouldn't be chiseled in stone. They're written in like, you know, one of those things that you can rub out with your finger on the social media channel. Like, they change week to week. New information came to light.
New information did come to light. How much of a dent is this to Mayo's hopes, in your opinion?
Well, we'll see tomorrow when we're doing the power rankings.
We will see. Well, that'll be my opinion on that. Like, I think that the fact that we're going, as you mentioned earlier on, the fact that we're going into a different type of league next year, being a Division 2 team isn't a problem, as it would be in previous years. I'm not sure was that in their thinking whatsoever. I do think, though, like, I'm not sure, has anybody spoken about the fact that Limerick, for example, won the National League on Sunday? I don't think anybody's spoken about the fact that Kerry won the National League even
we didn't
on
mention
Saturday.
it.
Nobody cares about the league, especially when Championship, more so when Championship is this close up against it. Leitrim, as mad as it is to say, was a bigger priority for Mayo probably going into training last week.
Right. Who's at number one?
The Dubs. The Dubs are at number one. We spoke about noise earlier on. I think it is going to become a thing where the lack of a crowd is going to have an impact. And who's got the noisiest, most consistent fans in the world, and not in the world, in Gaelic games, is Dublin. And when I say it's consistent, it is all the big games. There is always a sea of blue behind one of the goals. It is something that they can draw a lot of energy from. Bernard Brogan, in recent weeks on his book tour, has only hammered that home more. All these suspicions that we had about the Hill being this thing that gives you that extra boost of energy is true. Teams have had to create their own volume. The Limerick Hurlers were doing it at the weekend. Donegal were doing it the previous week against Tyrone. How do Dublin manage to find that extra ounce of energy without the Hill being behind them? All the other counties who've gone to play Dublin in Croke Park have had to do that for years. So they will have had a little bit of that information in the bank where they're going into the Lions' Den. The Lions' Den is still present. It still has the lion there, but it just doesn't have the baying Romans all around it, hoping for blood of the visitor. I don't know if that analogy makes any sense whatsoever.
It nearly did. It was nearly perfect. I mean, I'm not sure that the baying for the blood, that would have, like, without the lions, when the gladiators and when, you know, Maximus is doing his thumb up or thumb down, or whoever the emperor was, I can't remember. That's the important bit. Actually, home advantage, we've seen in all sports, has been a very important factor up until the point where you take the crowds out, and then suddenly home advantage doesn't exist anymore. So I think that, like, if you think back to Mayo missing frees into the Hill, if you think back to, like, what would the results of those All-Irelands have been where home advantage is worth literally a couple of points in drawn games or matches that you win by a point, you lose those games.
The free taking is an interesting one because that is another theory that's been put out there after the hurling at the weekend. That it's like the free takers, the unerring free takers are going to be even more unerring because of the fact that there's no tension being ratcheted up by the crowd, whether it's support, even if it's people supporting you, sometimes that can be added pressure. Now, that very point is something that will play into Dublin's favour as well, where there won't be the expectancy, say there would have been on Dean Rock when he had that final kick against Kerry in the drawn game last year. Maybe he makes that in an empty Croke Park, so this can work two ways.
Maybe.
My suspicion, though, is that it would work against Dublin slightly.
And also, they haven't looked great. That's the other part of it.
They haven't looked great whatsoever, and there hasn't been a spell for Dublin, definitely under Jim Gavin, where that has been acceptable. And I know that won't be the case for the next couple of weeks either. They do have a longer period to bed things in over the next couple of weeks because, let's face it, they will win Leinster quite easily again this year. It is if those performances continue throughout the Leinster Championship, that is when there will be a real concern, because I'm confident that the challenge, no matter what challenge they get in an All-Ireland semi-final this year, will be a strong one, and they will have to overcome two really tough games to win an All-Ireland at least this year.